The invisible Sparcana de Armas sat at the edge of the long, cold table inside Studio Room 5. Around her were people with notepads, laptops, and scripts, all moving fast, all talking over one another. She stayed quiet, even though her heart was racing with thoughts. It was her third week on set, and though she had lines and scenes to memorize, she had something else burning inside her, an idea. But ideas from actresses were not always welcomed in those rooms, especially not from someone who still felt like an outsider. She watched as the director explained the next scene, a dramatic moment between her character and Keanu Reeves's character. The plan was loud, heavy, filled with shouting and fast cuts. But Anna didn't believe that's what the moment needed. To her, it needed silence, breath, stillness. She kept thinking, what if the most powerful moment was the quietest one? When they paused for feedback, Anna slowly raised her hand. A few heads turned, some eyebrows raised. The room hushed a little. I have a thought, she said softly. The director looked up, curious but guarded. Go ahead. Anna's voice was calm but unsure. What if, instead of shouting, they both just paused? What if they said nothing and let their eyes speak? I think that would feel more real, more painful. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone scribbled something on a page. One of the assistant writers coughed, almost as if trying to end the moment quickly. The director gave a tight smile. Thanks, Anna. Let's stick to what's on the page for now. And just like that, the idea floated away, unacknowledged. No one said anything more. For the next hour, they rehearsed the scene exactly how it was written. Loud, dramatic, and busy. Anna smiled when the camera rolled, but inside she felt something sink. Not because they said no, because they hadn't even really heard. When the session ended, the crew packed up, lights dimmed and voices thinned into whispers. Anna stayed behind for a few minutes, alone in the empty room. She sat there, wondering if she had made a mistake, if she had spoken too soon, or if it was better to just do her job and leave creativity to others. She didn't hear the footsteps. Behind her, "Hey," said a quiet voice. She turned. It was Keanu. He wasn't dressed like a star, just jeans, a plain shirt, and a soft look in his eyes. He walked in slowly and sat across from her, resting his elbows on the table. "Your idea?" he said. "I liked it." Anna looked at him, unsure. "It felt honest," Keanu added. "Those kinds of moments, they're rare." "You were right. Silence sometimes says more than words ever could." Anna felt her eyes sting, not with tears, but with relief. Someone had listened. Someone had actually heard her. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu leaned back. "Don't give up on your instinct, even if the room doesn't clap for you. Doesn't mean your voice isn't worth hearing." Anna smiled. It was small, but it grew. The next day, nothing had changed on the schedule. The script was still the same words, the same loud, angry moment. But Keanu had a quiet conversation with the director that morning. No one knew what was said, only that they stepped aside for a few minutes, nodded slowly, and walked back without saying much. Anna showed up on set, ready to shoot the scene as written. She had prepared herself to stay in line, to do her job well, and not ask questions. But when the director called her and Keanu over, he looked at her for a long second before saying, "We're going to try it your way. Just once. Let's see how it feels." Anna stood still for a moment. Her throat tightened. "Really?" she asked, surprised. The director nodded. "Yes. One quiet take. Give it your best." Anna turned to Keanu, and he gave her a small, quiet smile. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was filled with support. They shot the scene, no shouting, no wild hand movements. Anna stepped into character and felt her whole body melt into that silence. Her character's eyes met Keanu's, and instead of rage, there was sorrow. Instead of chaos, there was tension. Real tension. One tear fell down her cheek. One breath escaped his lips. And the air between them grew thick, the kind of silence that pulls people in and refuses to let go. When the scene ended, it was no cut right away. The room stayed silent for a few extra seconds, and in those seconds, everyone felt it. When the director finally said cut, his voice was lower, thoughtful. "Wow," someone whispered from behind the camera. Anna's heart was beating so fast. She looked at Keanu, who just nodded, like he already knew. Later that day, she found out the scene would be kept just the way they did it. Quiet, raw, no background music, no shouting, just the silence of truth. And even more surprising, the whole team was talking about it. Not because it was her idea, but because it worked. Because it touched something in them. In her small trailer that evening, Anna sat down and looked at her phone. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from nerves, but from gratitude. She had spoken a small truth, and someone, just one person, had believed in it. Because of that, everything had changed. That night, she opened her journal and wrote one line. "Keanu built a whole scene around my whisper," and she smiled. The echo of a whisper. Next morning, Anna arrived on set earlier than usual. She walked quietly, her steps echoing in the long hallway that led to makeup. A few crew members nodded to her with warm smiles. Something was different. People who had barely looked at her before now greeted her like they'd known her for years. It wasn't fame. It wasn't praise. It was respect. Quiet, steady respect. In the makeup chair, as brushes moved across her skin and soft lights glowed in the mirror, she heard a conversation behind the divider. "Did you see that scene they shot yesterday? The quiet one? Yeah, gave me goosebumps. It felt so real." Anna lowered her eyes and smiled to herself. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. When she stepped onto set, the director called everyone into a circle. Actors, crew, even lighting techs. He held the script in his hand but didn't open it. "We're adjusting some things today," he said. "Not big changes, just tone. We want to keep the honesty we captured yesterday, that rawness. We'll try less music, more breath, more space to let the actors feel the moment." On his heart skipped a beat. They weren't just changing one scene, they were changing the approach. And it all began with a single whisper from her. She looked over at Keanu, who stood with his arms folded, watching quietly. He didn't smile or nod or make any grand gesture. When their eyes met, she felt everything she needed to feel. Support, belief, friendship. Between takes, Anna and Keanu sat on the edge of a prop bench near the soundstage. The day had been long. The air smelled like coffee and sawdust. She looked at him and said softly, "Why did you speak up for me?" He thought for a moment, then replied, "Because I've been you." She blinked. "I've been the one in the room with an idea no one wanted to hear," he continued. "And I've learned something: most good things in film, in life, start from a place of being overlooked." Anna nodded slowly. Made sense now. Keanu wasn't just a kind man. He understood what it felt like to be invisible. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, old notebook. It was worn around the edges. "I carry this with me," he said. "Every idea that came to me when no one was watching. It's in here." He handed it to her. She flipped through the pages carefully. Handwritten thoughts, scene ideas, emotional moments, even single words. All scribbled in a quiet handwriting. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "So are your ideas," he replied. The next week, the energy on set began to shift completely. More people were speaking up. A young lighting assistant shared a suggestion about shadow placement, and it got used. A wardrobe intern offered a fabric change, and it got approved. It was as if Anna's bravery had started a ripple. Silent ones, the unseen ones, they were finally being noticed. Anna didn't try to take credit. She just showed up, did her work, and gave her best to every scene. But word spread quickly in Hollywood circles. People were talking not just about the film, but about how it was being made. The honesty, the teamwork, the quiet strength. One afternoon, after shooting a long emotional sequence, Anna found a folded note taped to her trailer door. She opened. It read, "Your silence was louder than their noise. Thank you for reminding us why we tell stories." There was no name, no signature, just those words. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Anna joined Keanu for dinner in a quiet little restaurant tucked away from the city lights. No paparazzi. No flashing cameras. Just two artists talking like old friends, they laughed. They remembered scenes. They even shared stories about their worst auditions, the ones that ended in rejection and silence. Anna told him about a director who once said she had nothing special. Keanu told her about a role he was cut from, without even being told, but then the conversation turned soft again. "Do you ever feel like we're just visitors?" Anna asked. "Like we don't really belong in this world?" Keanu took a sip of water and nodded. "All the time. But maybe that's why we make the best stories, because we still feel." No smiled. "You ever wish you could? Go back and do it all differently?" He shook his head. "No. Every silent room, every ignored idea, it led to this moment. Right here with you, and I wouldn't change that." The next day, they filmed a powerful scene. Anna's character was supposed to walk away, tears in her eyes, but strong. The scene called for her to deliver a final line before the cut, but when the cameras rolled, she didn't say it. Instead, she paused, looked back, and turned and walked away in silence. The director stood still for a moment and said, "Cut." Everyone looked around. There was confusion. Was it a mistake? But the director smiled. "Keep it," he said. "It was better than what was written." Anna stood off to the side, surprised, almost in disbelief. Keanu walked up and whispered, "See? You don't need a line to leave a mark." She looked at him and felt something shift in her again. Not because she had power now, but because she had a voice, and it was being heard. When silence leads the store, days moved quietly on set. But something was happening beneath the surface, something rare. It wasn't loud success or flashing lights. It was deeper than that. Every person working on the film, from makeup to props to sound, felt like they were part of something meaningful. And at the center of it all, without ever asking for attention, was Anna. She didn't try to take over scenes. She didn't chase credit. She simply brought truth to each moment. And the way she worked with Keanu, it was like music with no sound. They didn't speak much between takes anymore. They didn't have to. A glance, a nod, a pause, it was enough. One evening, after a particularly heavy day of filming, Anna was walking back to her trailer when she noticed something odd. A group of new crew members were being rushed in. There was whispering tension. Someone had fallen ill, and a new assistant director was stepping in for a few days. She didn't think much of it. Until the next morning, the new assistant director, a sharp, fast-talking man named Rick, came in with a completely different energy. He started changing the shot list. He wanted more close-ups, faster cuts, more emotion, more volume. Quiet rhythm they had all been building was suddenly being replaced by rushed chaos. Anna watched as the lighting team struggled to adjust. The costume designers seemed nervous. Even the actors felt thrown off. And then it happened. During one scene, rehearsal Rick stopped Anna mid-performance and said, "You need to cry harder, louder. The silence thing is too subtle. People won't get it." Anna froze. Before she could speak, Keanu gently stepped forward. With respect, he said calmly, "We've already filmed scenes that moved people without raising a voice." Rick shrugged. "I get it. You're both serious actors, but audiences want impact. Emotion, noise." The room fell still. Anna looked down, then looked up, and for the first time, she spoke with a firmer voice. "Impact doesn't always come from noise," she said. "Sometimes it comes from honesty." Rick smirked. "Sure, but that's not what sells." Keanu stayed quiet, but his eyes narrowed. Not in anger, in disappointment. The director, who had been listening nearby, finally stepped in. "Let's take 5, he said quickly. Anna walked outside to breathe. The sun was hot on her face, but the breeze felt cool. She sat on the small bench behind the studio, alone, thinking. Was she wrong? Had all of this, the changes, the new tone, been a mistake? But just then, an older woman who worked in the wardrobe department came and sat beside her. "I don't mean to bother you," she said gently, "but I just wanted to say." "Thank you," Anna turned to her. "For what?" "For bringing heart into this film," the woman said. for making us all remember why we started working in movies in the first place. It's not about volume. It's about truth. And you brought that back. Anna didn't know what to say. Her eyes filled with emotion. The woman smiled, patted her hand, and said, "Don't stop now." Later that night, Keanu knocked on Anna's trailer door. He stepped in with a small folder in his hand. "What's this?" she asked. He handed it to her. Inside were alternate takes of the scene they were filming. The original ones, the quiet ones, the ones with pauses and eye contact and real silence. "I asked the editor to save these," Keanu said, "just in case." Anna smiled. "You." He sat down across from her. The small trailer was filled with warm yellow light, and for a moment, it felt like the world had slowed down. "You're not just acting anymore," Keanu said. "You're leading." Anna looked at him, unsure. "You changed the tone of this whole film," he continued. "And no one even saw it happening. You led with grace, not power, with feeling, not noise. That's rare." Anna felt something deep rise inside her, not pride, but peace. She hadn't forced anything. She had simply been honest. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Rick was gone. The main director had made a quiet decision. No announcement, no drama, just a return to the heart of the film. The feeling returned, the silence, the rhythm, the soft courage. They reshot the scene Rick had criticized. Anna didn't cry loudly. She didn't raise her voice. She stood in the center of the frame, her eyes filled with held-back emotion, and whispered only 2 words. "I'm trying." That was it. When the camera stopped rolling, no one moved. The director wiped his face. "Cut," he said, his voice shaking a little. Word began to spread again. Agents called the studio, asking what kind of project this was. Other actors asked to visit the set just to watch. Producers from other films started saying, "Do it the Anna way." Anna didn't change who she was. She didn't walk taller. She didn't speak louder. But her presence grew. And through it all, Keanu stayed close. Not as her protector, not as a legend, but as a quiet ally. Someone who saw her not as a rising star, but as an artist. On a Friday night, it wrapped one of the most emotional scenes of the film. The director called everyone together. "We've shot something that feels different," he said. "And oh, that too, to people who never asked to lead but did it anyway. Keanu and Anna." Everyone clapped. But Anna didn't look proud. She looked humbled, surprised, even a little. Overwhelmed, and then the director said something that made her heart stop. This film, it was built around Anna's idea, one that was almost ignored. The room fell. Still, everyone turned toward her. Anna stood there, holding back tears, and in that moment, she realized something she would never forget. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room carries the biggest truth, and sometimes just takes one person to believe in it. Her voice in the Fremeath soft applause from that night still echoed in Anna's heart days later. Not because she loved attention. She didn't. But because it meant something deeper. She had always felt like a guest in the world of film. Now, for the first time, she felt like she belonged. But with recognition came new weight, a week after the director praised her in front of the team. Anna received an unexpected message. A well-known studio executive wanted to meet her, not just to talk about this film, but about writing, directing, shaping stories. It wasn't a job offer, not yet, it was an invitation. The message ended with, "You clearly have more than a voice. You have vision." Anna read the message 3 times, then put her phone down. Her fingers trembled. On set, things were moving faster now. They were behind schedule by 2 days, and pressure was growing. But instead of cutting corners, the director leaned harder into silence, into the space that Anna had opened. The crew followed his lead. Even the studio had stopped pushing for rewrites, but not everyone was happy. One of the film's producers, a man named Dale, started showing up more often. He stood behind the monitors, arms crossed, giving cold glances every time a quiet scene was shot. He believed in formulas, pacing, market-tested drama, and he didn't trust the new direction. One afternoon, after a take, he pulled the director aside. His voice wasn't loud, but Anna heard it anyway. "This is beautiful, sure, but is it bankable?" The director replied with something Anna couldn't hear, but his tone was calm, firm. When Keanu walked by minutes later, he looked at Anna and said, "Don't let them rush you. Beauty doesn't have to shout to be remembered." Later that day, Anna and Keanu were called to film a flashback scene. It was quiet and emotional, her character watching his character through a rainy window, knowing she couldn't reach him anymore. There was no dialogue, only their eyes, silence and breath and regret. As they filmed, something happened. That wasn't planned. Anna pressed her hand against the glass, and a tear slipped from her eye. Not from acting, but from something deeper, something real. Across the glass, Keanu didn't speak either. He just stared at her, letting his own sadness settle quietly into the space between them. The director whispered, "Hold," and the camera kept rolling longer than scripted. When he finally said cut, no one moved. Dale, the producer, walked away. He didn't speak a word. Anna stayed near the set, shaken. Not by the scene, but by the truth that had come out of her. She had felt something in that moment that she hadn't expected. Not just grief for the character, but grief for all the times she'd been afraid to show this part of herself. She sat quietly, hugging her knees until Keanu came over. "You okay?" he asked. Anna nodded. "I didn't expect it to hit like that." "That's because it was real," he said. "You let the truth come through, and now it's in the film forever." She looked up at him. "Do you ever feel scared after scenes? Like that? Like maybe you gave away too much of yourself?" Keanu smiled gently. "Every time. But that's where the beauty is. The risk." As filming neared its final weeks, the studio sent in a team of marketers to visit the set. They were friendly on the outside, but everyone knew why they were there, to make sure the film would sell. They watched quietly, took notes, asked questions about scenes. When they approached Anna, they smiled politely and said, "You're doing beautiful work, but we may need a little more energy in the final cut, just to give trailers a strong hook." Anna said nothing. She just nodded, then walked away. Later that night, Keanu found her on the rooftop of the studio. She was sitting alone, looking up at the stars. "You ever wish we could just make movies for no one?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "But then I remember someone out there is going to see this. They'll feel understood. Maybe that's enough." She thought about that. Maybe it wasn't about millions of viewers. Maybe it was about reaching one, someone who felt forgotten, or quiet, or overlooked, just like she once did. On the final day of filming, something unexpected happened. Before the final scene, the director gathered everyone. He took out a piece of paper. "This was the original ending," he said, "but we're changing it." People looked around, surprised. He continued, "The new ending came from Anna's journal. She shared it with me. It just felt right." Anna froze. She hadn't known he would use it. She had written that scene in a late-night moment, thinking no one would ever read it. It wasn't polished. It wasn't dramatic. It was just a simple goodbye, full of love, full of silence. When they filmed it, the entire set went quiet. Anna stood in the frame, looking toward the horizon, her character's journey coming to an end. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood still, breathing in the wind, a small, soft smile on her face. And it was perfect. When the final cut was called, everyone clapped, not loudly, but with meaning. Anna walked off the set, her heart full. She turned and saw Keanu standing by the exit, waiting for her. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms. She walked into them, and they hugged long and quiet, a hug between two artists who had walked through fear, doubt, and pressure, and had told a story that mattered. Before they left for the wrap party, the director handed Anna something in a brown envelope. "What is it?" she asked. "Your first core writing credit," he said. "You earned it." She looked at the paper, her name, printed on the credits. She had whispered one idea, and now that whisper had written part of a film. The story behind the story, Anna, didn't go to the wrap party right away. While most of the cast and crew drove toward the fancy rooftop bar booked for the celebration, she stayed behind in her trailer. The lights were off. Her bag sat by the door, zipped and ready. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. She held the brown envelope in her hands, the one with her name on the script co-writer. It felt unreal. Not because she didn't believe she deserved it, but because she had never expected it. All she ever wanted was to be heard, not to be celebrated. She thought about her very first audition in Los Angeles, the one where they told her she didn't have enough edge. She thought about the cold rooms, the scripts with no soul, the rejection emails that arrived without even her name on them. And now, here she was. Not just acting in a film, but shaping it. It's with her thoughts, her vision, her silence, a soft knock. On the door broke the quiet. She opened it to find Keanu standing there. He was already dressed for the party, a dark jacket, a simple black shirt, and that same calm in his eyes. "You coming?" he asked Dot. Anna hesitated. "I don't know. Feels like too much." He smiled gently. "Then let's skip it." She blinked. "What?" "We don't have to go. We can go somewhere else. Something quiet." She looked at him, grateful. "Like where?" he thought for a second. "You ever been to the cliffs in Malibu at night?" They drove along the coast. With the windows down, the wind was cold, but the silence between them was warm. Neither spoke much. They didn't need to. There was peace in just being. When they reached the cliffs, they parked and walked out to the edge. Below them, waves crashed in slow rhythm. The stars above stretched like a blanket. They sat on a large rock, sharing a small thermos of coffee that Keanu had brought from his car. Anna took a sip and asked, "Did you ever think this film would turn out the way it did?" He shook his head. "No, but I hoped it might." "How did you know to trust me?" she asked. Keanu looked at her for a long moment. "Because you reminded me of someone I used to be, someone who thought too deeply, felt too much. Someone who didn't think their ideas were worth anything, till one person listened." She looked at him. "Who listened to you?" Smiled quietly. "Woman I met on my first real movie. She wasn't famous. She was a script supervisor. But she told me that silence was a strength. I never forgot that." Anna nodded. "I want to be that person for someone else someday." "You already are," Keanu said. The next morning, Anna woke to dozens of messages on her phone. Articles, photos, interviews. Someone from the crew had shared a behind-the-scenes photo of her and Keanu during the silent window scene. The image went viral. The caption read, "This moment wasn't written, it was lived." Within hours, film blogs and entertainment sites were writing about her. Not just as an actress, but as a storyteller. The director gave an interview that afternoon and said something no one expected. "Anna reshaped the heart of this movie with a single idea. I've worked with stars, but now I've worked with a voice." Night Anna sat in her apartment, still trying to process it all. Emails kept coming. Offers, invitations, a request to speak at a film school, podcast interview, a panel discussion on creative courage. But what stayed with her wasn't any of that. It was the way Keanu had sat, beside her on the cliffs, without trying to fix anything, without saying much. Just listening, just being there, that she realized, was what made him different. He didn't lead with fame. He led with presence. A few days later, Anna received a call from her agent. "They're putting your name forward for a film festival award," she said. "It's not just for acting, for writing." Anna didn't know what to say. "They want you to attend the screening," her agent added. "It's a big deal," Anna agreed. But not because she wanted the spotlight. She wanted to sit in that theater and watch the story. The one she'd helped shape from the inside out. The night of the screening was quiet and elegant. No flashing lights. It's just a small theater filled with artists, critics, and dreamers. Anna sat near the back. Keanu sat beside her. As the lights dimmed and the opening scene began, she felt her chest tighten. The story unfolded slow, honest, raw. The silent scenes held the room. The quiet moments brought tears, and when her final scene played, the one where she smiled at the horizon, the audience sat still for a full 10 seconds after the screen faded to black. No one moved. No one clapped. Not Right away they just breathed, and then the applause came, not thunderous, but deep, respectful. Earned afterward, people came up to her thanking her, not for her performance, but for the feeling the film gave them. "I felt seen," one woman said. "I remembered something I forgot," said another. A young man whispered, "That scene by the window, it broke me in the best way," Anna smiled. Not because she had finally arrived, but because her story had reached them, and maybe that was the whole point that night. Keanu walked her back to her car. Before getting in, Anna turned to him and said, "Thank you. Not for what you did, but for what you didn't do. You didn't talk over me. You didn't save me. You just stood beside me." Keanu looked at her gently. "It's easy to stand beside someone when you believe in where they're going." Nodded. "I want to do that for someone else someday," he smiled. "You will?" And as she drove away under the soft glow of streetlights, one thought stayed with her. Her voice didn't need to be loud to be heard. It only needed to be true. A scene of her own man's past. The film was released quietly. No big premiere, no red carpet drama. But something strange began to happen. People started watching it, and then watching it again. They posted about it, shared clips, quoted. Lines that weren't even lines, just glances, just moments. The studio had expected modest results. What they got instead was a slow burning. Wildfire, Anna's quiet performance began showing up on top 10 lists. One article read, "The loudest performance this year was breathed by Ana de Armas." Film schools began screening the movie as a case study in subtle acting. Young filmmakers talked about the Anna way, letting the story breathe, allowing silence to speak. Some even said they cried in scenes where no one said a word. And when Anna saw all this happening, she didn't feel famous. She felt responsible. Her schedule filled up with offers. Big scripts. Roles with long monologues and high drama. But none of them felt right. Until one day, she received a small email from a first-time director. He wrote, "I don't have much money. And the story is simple, but it was inspired by your silence. Be honored if you read it." Anna did read it, and she cried. Not because the script was perfect, it wasn't, but because it felt like something true, something raw. Something small but full of heart. She signed on. And when the press asked why she chose a quiet indie project over blockbuster roles, she answered with one simple line, "Because this is the kind of story that listens back." Meanwhile, the film she and Keanu worked on, the one born from her whispered idea, got nominated for 3 major awards. When they called her name for Best Original Screenplay at one of the ceremonies, Anna didn't walk to the stage with pride in her step. She walked slowly, humbly, with tears in her eyes. On stage, under the bright lights, she stood for a moment before speaking, and then she said, "I want to thank the people who ever felt small in a room full of noise, who were told their ideas were too quiet, too soft, too strange. I want you to know your voice matters, even if it's just a whisper." The room rose to their feet, but in the crowd, one person stayed seated, smiling softly, eyes glistening. Keanu, because he knew this wasn't about an award. It was about the girl who once doubted herself, who now wrote her own endings. After the ceremony, Anna found Keanu near the exit. He was sipping tea from a paper cup, completely unbothered by the cameras. She walked up and handed him the award. "This belongs to you," she said. He shook his head. "No, I just held the door open. Want that?" "Made all the difference," she said. He looked at her for a long second, then asked, "So, what's next?" Anna smiled. "I'm going to write something, not just a scene, a whole film. Direct it too," Keanu asked. "Maybe," she said, "but only if I can shoot it my way. Slow, soft, honest." He raised his cup and toasted to the whisper that changed everything. A year later, Anna stood behind the camera on her own set. It wasn't big. It wasn't loud, but it was hers. She gave directions gently, never shouting, never rushing. And when a young actress hesitated before sharing an idea, Anna knelt beside her and said, "Tell me, even if it's just a small thought." Sometimes, the smallest thought becomes the biggest moment. The girl nodded and whispered her idea. Anna listened, really listened, then smiled and said, "Let's try it." As the cameras rolled and the crew moved quietly around her, Anna stood with her hands in her pockets, watching the scene unfold. A soft one, full of space, full of feeling, and she realized she wasn't acting anymore. She was shaping stories, and in every breath, every pause, every silent beat was a piece of her, a voice that once doubted itself, now leading with grace. And somewhere out there, in a quiet theater or a small bedroom screen, someone would watch. Someone would feel seen. Someone would whisper, "I want to tell stories," like that. And it would begin again. Because one whisper leads to another. And that's how change begins.